technology. Like we have seen it with other terms like cloud. A couple of years ago, threat intelligence. I think threat intelligence is still a hot topic at the moment. That is, the vendors are trying to sell you threat intelligence, and what exactly is threat intelligence? A lot of people that don't actually know, or are not able to explain. So the IoT is something that is basically, it's everything that is connected to the internet, and now the concentration is being on those things that doesn't look like general computer. So that might be a fridge, like you would expect, and mobile devices, drones, for example, our productivity devices, health monitoring systems. Yeah, well, and those couple of things I'm highlighting, maybe they're not directly IoT components, but still I'm trying to emphasize it because this is how we went here. This is how the problem grew beyond, I wouldn't say beyond repair, but it's pretty messed up. So currently on the network we have, on a global network like internet, we have 32 million open DNS resolvers, which are not fridges for the most part. A lot of them are Soho routers, for example, like your home router. And the tendency is that it has grown to this point because the consumer attitude is like that. We go to the store, we go to the supermarket, we buy our gadgets, we trust the default configuration, we plug it in, and we are happy with that, which is quite convenient for the customer, right? But this is also an indication that there is no strict regulation or regulation, standardization, and certification on the security part for the vendors on IoT. So maybe you have, if you're interested in the IoT topic, you would probably be able to read a lot of interesting cases on applications of IoT in agriculture, in big industries. So like intelligent chipped cows, for example. There are such scientific projects where cows are being equipped with small computers for monitoring their behavior and movement. Here in Latvia we also have sensor networks that are monitoring berry fields so that the harvest would be bigger. And this is not a science fiction, so there are some big economies around the world who are already dependent on those technologies. IoT technologies and sensor networks on the agriculture field to get their harvest bigger. So imagine if some numbers are being influenced by hacker, then he could also influence easily the harvest, and whole chain would collapse, like the harvest itself, and then the money as well. So maybe you have heard of those latest events of the Ddos attack on dynamic DNS infrastructure in the United States a week ago. So there's some speculation that that is the biggest DDoS attack we have evidence so far. It was more than 900 gigabits per second. And most of the devices performing the attack were IP cameras. So we have changed not we, but the obstacles have changed. We now see the Internet of Things, or those things that are not looking like general computer being connected to the internet, that are participating in the attack. And I think today there is also a presentation from a security expert, Kirill Solovyos, who together with CERT.LV also conducted the research on IP camera vulnerabilities in Latvia. So we have gathered some data, performed some scanning activities, and there are about 20,000 vulnerable DNS servers in Baltics, about 3,000 vulnerable IP cameras in Baltics, and those are just results of a quick scans. There are also things like post terminals, like you can actually monitor or evidence how the cashier is selling you oranges on in the market or in the shopping center. So those things are connected, and somebody put them online with default configuration, and this is why we have this problem now. So yeah, well, we talk about those problems with IoT, and everyone now is telling you that, okay, this is a problem, we have to do something with that. And I'm telling you, the security expert, in the security expert field, people are talking about this problem for years. And I have a feeling that most of the people in the decision-making level has not heard them, or just have ignored them. And so what is the process? Yeah, well, we kind of acknowledge that there's a problem, but the industry is rolling, the marketing the ball is rolling so fast that we, on a consumer side, we just buy our new things, buy more things, connect them to the internet because it's cool, it's convenient, and it works. So the functionality is there, but the security is not requested. So one thing, the security is not requested by consumer for the most part. And this is also because we don't want to pay more for the product because it's more secure, right? This is the basic idea of the consumer. And because of the lack of the regulations, the vendor sees an opportunity not to implement the security according to best practices, and because it's cheaper, and they just launch the product and off you go. So yeah, there's some ignorance. My point is that it should be changed. So currently it seems that because of the hackers, because of doesn't matter whether they are white hat hackers, gray or black, they do their stuff for the most part for financial purposes, financial gain, though it might be a criminal. So hackers and cybercrime, they are now acting as an eye-opener for us. They do their black magic, and I have to admit that some of those attacks that are huge and leave big impacts, they are performed by script kiddies. This is the problem that is highlighted by those passive DNS resolvers. If you know the technology, how it works, the script kiddie so basically the school children can perform the attack, which is devastating, with several laptops or workstations. So what do? We identify the problem, and then we patch it. Then we patch it once more, like with Adobe Flash, for example, right, or Java. Then we patch it again, and it's a never-ending story, just because this is how it works. But what I'd like to emphasize here, that we have gone through several times. We have gone through the process of responsible disclosure procedures, responsible vulnerability disclosure procedures, and vulnerability handling process. So the vulnerability handling process is actually not that easy as you would imagine, because in that recent case with security cameras, it took us almost a year to solve the problem with the vendor and with all the other involved parties. So the vendor was in China, with headquarters in the United States as well. We contacted the Chinese CERT as well, so they were responsive, and the process went on, and so it took us a year. The other part is that when you would like to disclose a vulnerability according to best practice, you would have to register a CVE number, so the official unique number for your discovered vulnerability, and this is usually done by organization in the United States. Either it's MITRE or CERT.LV, so under Carnegie Mellon University. So the process is heavy. So you can register your CVE. It can take you about any time from 1 day to a couple of months. Then you go through the resolution process, and then you have to publish it. And the problems that we have evidence is when you want to publish it, you would like to have a CVE details at that specific moment, but this is actually not possible, because when you notify being it's a MITRE or CERT.CC, then you have to wait for undefined time until they react. So I'm not blaming those guys. They're probably doing their job as good as they can, but I'm just highlighting that the process is not smooth. And I think that EU so European Union should acknowledge that, and probably the CV handling part might be also a regional thing, like we have with IP addresses and numbers and domains. Like we have RIPE for European IP address delegation, etc. So one thing to consider. Yeah, well, and regarding the patching stuff, I'll comment a little bit later as well, how it works. So we have, of course, the Internet of Things, or components of Internet of Things in industrial control systems. Sometimes those industrial control systems are controlling like gas pipelines, poisonous liquids and stuff. So sometimes just water. And this is a real-life example of analysis of a proprietary protocol analysis in industrial control system. And this is an example how the security is being done through obscurity. So the security approach was here not to document the communication, so you don't have a documentation, how it operates, and to use a proprietary protocol. And if you analyze it, you can see that the only necessary action here to open the valve and for water or gas being released is just one simple bit flip. Here you see 0, 1, and here you see 0, 0. If you change that in your stream, the valve is open. So this is how the security works. Of course, those things are usually protected in a air-gapped environment, like they are not connected directly to the internet. But still, I'm sure you have heard already of the incidents in industrial control systems that have been compromised, despite the fact that they are not connected. So eventually there are people who identify that, okay, there's a possibility to use those weaknesses, so why not engage those fridges, toasters and IP cameras and etc. in some more attractive stuff like DDoS attacks, or maybe even something better. And this is what actually is going on now. So probably the biggest DDoS attack performed for the most part from IP cameras. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, the shit has hit the fan. So yeah, well, this is the brief history of DDoS attacks, of big DDoS attacks that we have evidence in past years. And as I mentioned, researchers and IT security people are talking about that for years, but maybe at this point someone has finally heard that and acknowledged that there is a problem because of the cyber criminals and attackers and script kiddies. So 2013, almost 400 gigabits per second attack on Spamhaus. So the attack was triggered by conflict between Spamhaus. Basically, the conflict was between hosting companies in Netherlands, and then the Spamhaus was involved. So one of the conflicting parties decided that Spamhaus should be nuked because of his involvement. It's like in a fight. The third guy gets the punch, right? And it was done by those DNS resolvers. As I mentioned, 32 million. At that point, it was like something like 24 million officially acknowledged DNS resolvers. Now it's 32. 2014, 400 gigabits per second on Cloudflare, which is a cloud hosting provider, has a huge experience with DDoS attacks and protecting their clients. So this was also a huge thing for them. Then in Hong Kong, for political reasons, 500 gigabits per second, also done with those Internet of Things and passive DNS resolvers. And the trend is going from, as you can see, the DNS resolvers, which was openly available. Then the attackers indicated that there are other technologies like NTP, SNMP, UPnP, and other protocols, most of them on the UDP, because the UDP, the specifics of UDP protocol is that they do not check. It is stateless protocol, and you can perform those attacks because of the stateless action of the protocol. So we have basically designed the thing to be bad. Then there's a BBC attack during the New Year Eve on 2015 to 2016, almost 600 gigs. And the recent attack on Krebs security. If someone of you don't know who Brian Krebs is, he's a IT security journalist, you might say, and activist who is publishing and trying to unmask the cybercrime gangs. So he gets punished for that quite a lot. And this one was directed to his website, krebsonsecurity.com. And again, this is where the IoT devices were highlighted at the top of the iceberg. And right after that, several weeks after, we see the almost 1 terabit per second DDoS attacks also from IoT devices on DNS infrastructure, which basically took down a lot of resources that we are using here in Latvia as well, like those social networks, Spotify services, PlayStation entertainment network, and etc. Yeah, and the CCTV devices perform these attacks. So if we take a look at the statistics, then these are several on the top of the vendors. So you can see that the vendors of those devices participating in attack, and these are default usernames and passwords. So you can find them in a documentation in the user manual. So maybe you have heard of the botnet that was utilizing those devices. It was called Mirai, and the Mirai code is interesting. So the approach is interesting, but there is no reason to call it sophisticated. Like, I have heard a lot of comments that this was so sophisticated attack, but if you take a look at this information and you take a look at the code of Mirai, so this is the sophistication. He just got the default configurations out of the manual and publicly available information. Of course, wrote the more or less intelligent code. This is pretty much the same, like it is actually identical, which is written here, but not in human readable language. And that's it. He just tries to connect to those devices, IP cameras with Telnet, and if he succeeds, then he just provides those default usernames and passwords, and off you go. Then he takes over the camera and uses for his own purposes, and in this case it was the DDoS attack. So apparently those events, those latest events on usage of those IoT devices in DDoS attacks, it was some kind of an eye opener for decision makers. And now we can hear that European Commission is trying to create a draft document for plans on cybersecurity rules for internet connected machines. So by that they mean Internet of Things. And the regulation is needed, actually. So I'll explain my point. Same happens in the United States. Okay, now we see that there's a problem, right? Some big networks went down. I guess we should do something. And on the regulation part, so the IoT industry is very interesting stuff. It is probably huge drive for startup projects and for startup companies. And I'm totally supporting startups, but you can imagine if there's a heavy regulation which has to be respected by startup companies, they will have to struggle with that at some point. But then again, if we see that the big industries now are showing the bad example, then probably have to do something. And this is something I would like to emphasize, that we as a consumer, we have to start to demand the security in our products that we are buying, and the vendors have to be somehow certified. The security policies have to be certified, so they're not able to launch the IoT products without proper security posture. Okay, so there's most of the DDoS attacks are possible because of IP spoofing. So IP spoofing is almost as old like an internet itself, and there's a thing called BCP38, which is a standard best practice policy. So the thing is invented, if you will, in May 2000. It's almost 17 years now. So researchers and IT security community has tried to influence decision makers, has tried to emphasize the need of implementing this thing, but it has failed. In all cases, it has failed, and Latvia during the presidency in the EU has also tried to do that. I know that the Netherlands is trying to do that as well. And the problem is, because on the decision-making level, there is no strict opinion that it should be done, because otherwise the attitude from the ISPs, for example, is that they're basically, in most cases, they are willing to cooperate. But if they look on the lack of regulation, then the discussion goes like that. So my competitor is doing that as well? No, not yet. Okay, then I'll not do that as well, while he doesn't do that. So there's some kind of a weird competition game, though. The BCP38 has failed for 17 years. And yeah, well, if we would be able to implement the network ingress filtering on the ISP level, then the IP spoofing would be eliminated. DDoS attacks would be, at least for some part, would be stopped. And this is just a question of attitude. So, again, apart on the standardization, have you seen any security camera which would act like your iPhone, for example, highlighting and informing you, okay, I have an update, would you like to install it? Probably no. At least I haven't seen anything like that. And this is what lacks now in IoT, because everyone is able to do whatever they like. So I think that this should be changed. Even though we have this technology in our mobile phones, we still have huge problems with their security. Imagine what is happening in IoT with those security cameras, with your fridges, with your thermostats and smart home components. You never know, right? Okay, I would like to install an update on my security camera, like we have identified some time ago here in Latvia as well. What should I do as a consumer, as a user? So, go figure out. This is what happened with one of the vendors called MileSight, which is the cameras itself are really high quality. They produce high quality image, which is fine, but security practices are messed up beyond any repair, I would say. So, together with Chinese CERT and MileSight, we managed to fix the problem. So they implemented a fix for all those vulnerabilities that our co-researcher found. It took us a year, and then they say, okay, we have a new firmware. How will you distribute it? The client has to contact us. So this is how the procedure from their standpoint should work. I would like to update my camera, so I have to find their website, I have to find how to contact them, I have to write an email, I'd like to install my new firmware, I have to hope that they will send me the new firmware, and then I install it. And this vendor actually, they had a backdoor installed in their products as well. So I think this is not how it should work. So as I said, IoT is a huge potential for startups, and we should make the rules of engagement more clear, or otherwise it will be a complete mess and we will not be able to repair it. And basically some part of it is already too late, but still we have to do something, right? And I'm not even mentioning the IPv6, because IPv6 is probably the protocol that will be utilized in IoT. And on IPv6 we have huge numbers of IP addresses, and then I would imagine that the bad guys will just check not the IP addresses, but will hunt for MAC addresses. Of course, there has to be some additional stuff done to get the MAC address, but if they will be able to surf across the network and see the MAC address parts to indicating the vendor, then they just collect the specific vendor bits and go off with their attacks. Yeah, and IoT in healthcare, like pacemakers and the vulnerabilities with pacemakers, you have probably heard of that as well. I'm not even going there. Okay, so thanks to the hackers and script kiddies and bad guys, we have acknowledged that there's a problem with IoT, and I hope that the decision makers across the world will also acknowledge that, and the industry will start being more regulated, because currently it's a total anarchy with IoT. From the consumer perspective, it's really cool. The technology is really interesting. We have enormous capabilities to build things, new things, and interesting, and security should not be forget. Thank you, and I think I have some minutes for questions. If you have them, I'll be happy to answer.
Well, there are a lot of conferences and presentations about the Internet of Things, but what are those kind of key takeaways for us, for consumers that want to use this smart equipment? Is there something that we can do, or just wait that those regulators do something, and after 20 years we get some outdated laws which then will be then not applicable because there are new hackers coming and new ideas?
So, as I said, the consumer should request the security. We started to request slowly, but still we started to request security in our mobile devices, right? Now people are more concerned with that. It took us some time, but consumers starting to request that and acknowledge the problem. On the technical side, of course, if we implement the IP surveillance, IP cameras on the surveillance side, if we implement some IoT elements in our houses, it should be at least eliminated from the internet, like on the local network, isolated to some extent. It's a simple thing to do, but still, all those cameras participating in those attacks, they were exposed to the internet. If they wouldn't be exposed, it would probably be solved for more than 50%. So, education. So, being an educated consumer is a critical part for being a secure consumer. So, we have to learn to use those things in a more secure way, and not to follow all the marketing trends that are being pushed at us, which is a hard thing to do, but eventually we'll get there, I think. And yeah, well, it takes some time. Like, it took us like 5 or 10 years to acknowledge that security, the fastening a security belt in the car is a good thing, and everyone now is doing that, but it took us a time.
Isn't that the biggest problem we have? That people just look at their at their neighbor and say, "Oh, he doesn't do that. It's fine. I don't need it either."
Probably, yeah. The human nature is one part in that problem as well.
Sweet. Any more questions?
I think,
Yeah.
wouldn't you agree that
Sorry.
the equipment that's been made, I mean, TVs, routers, and all that stuff that's been sold to consumers, they are open from the shelf. I mean, I think they need to change the approach. They have to sell it closed and then open the things that you need. And nowadays it's opened, and then you have to educate the people what needs to be closed on those. Yeah. It's all open. If you switch on the TV, it's all open. Everything is not transferring.
It's an excellent comment, and I think again it highlights the lack of regulation, because it's convenient. It's like with now. Okay, Windows operating system is getting more secure, but some time ago it was so chatty. It was completely, more or less, completely open and vulnerable, because it's convenient. You can sell the stuff to consumer. He's happy because everything works out of the box, but it's not secure. So yeah, my answer to your comment or question is that it should be more regulator, or we have to some on the decision-making level or on the regulator level. There has to be some restrictions or some best practices that have to be followed. And like with BCP 38, I would say that if the ISP is not following BCP 38 practice, then the ISP license is not being issued or being cancelled. That's it. You're out of the business. This is how it should work, I think. Any more questions?
There might be an invitation for the best questions today, so please. And also, there's actually a break in a minute, so we have plenty of time as long as you get a coffee break. Any more questions at all? Either way, as I said, there's a coffee break, so you can ask. Oh, there's one more. Sorry. There's a coffee break after this.
There's one last question, and it's again goes in parallel with all other questions. I sometimes I think that yes, we are talking a lot of it that we have insecurity by design. For example, if these days I'm responsible for the project of implementing a new homepage for my organization, then I think I put the security phase in this project. I need to think of the audit of the standards that developing company should apply with, and so on. But if I'm an individual, simple person with no knowledge, maybe I don't know what I need to ask from this seller of product. So yes, it's an issue about lack of regulation, but also I sometimes think that maybe for some reason it is done by purpose. People is buying technology and functionality and new possibilities, but they never think about, is it safe? Yes, it's what are we talking about all the day. But maybe this can be regulated not only by legislation of some states, but it should be as a standard of developing and selling anything. I don't know if you get my point.
I was just going to say, would you like to come up here? Do you have a presentation with this? Thank you so much.
Yeah, just a short answer, okay? You're right, and I think that my point was not only to regulate on the legislative level, but also on the standardization. Like I mentioned, old fella BCP 38, it's a standard which is ignored, and there's no body that is pushing those industry components or industry players to respect that. This is the problem. There are huge amounts of standards that are good, but they are just being ignored because of the yeah, maybe the market. And this is again, this might be a policy for the, it might be a driving force to make it more flexible, to push things further faster. Like the industry is moving and developing more faster because the lack of regulation. But now we have reached the point of no return. So with IoT, and we have to start to think about that.
It's just a lot of big companies are lobbying political parties. So
Maybe this is especially, I think, interesting topic on industrial control system vendors, because there are not so a lot of them and they have influence.
I have a question as well. There's a new regulation with the tax office about the ability to shut down the .lv domain names. How is that? You know, in support of CERT.LV, and you know, any comment on that at all?
Okay, that's a tricky question, but the short comment is that no one without appropriate expertise should be allowed to block domain names.
Of course, yeah.
So if you're not a IT security and domain expert, I doubt that it would be a good idea, because domain itself is just a numbering and it's a limited resource, which is just an abbreviation or technology for visiting some resource, and the name itself is not to be blamed because of the actions of human.
Okay.
And we can do some restrictive stuff also on that level, but it should be temporary. Like there should be strictly regulated procedure how one should do that, and should be really cautious about that. Are you sure that, for example, your website or your company website will not suffer the same consequences that maybe some lack of the technical knowledge at that opposite side was a decision that we should block it?
Exactly.